So here we are, end of 2025. Everyone's favourite year, finished, done, gone. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk through, we're going to recap. We're going to look back at the year that was and try to understand the mind of a normie. And traditionally this has been done by Spotify, telling you what music you listen to the whole year. So what I'll do is I'll take the same theme, I'll take the same apparatus, and I'll use it to examine the normie. What did the normie do this year? What did they think was important, integral to their life, such that they downloaded the podcast to listen to it, to get the update they needed? And other than having the X, I think the platform X being the weird part of the internet now, ironically, it goes, I think, oscillating between normie-sphere and weird. And particularly X is an interesting platform because you have different zones almost. If you think of 4chan, you have the separate sub-chans, and you go, well, I can look at anime, I can look at video games, I can look at board games, traditional games, I can look at literature. All of these things have a 4chan sub-chan. And interestingly, obviously, you have different communities form, different views, all those type of things. So it's always, I guess, both interesting and somewhat transcendental, the themes that seem to go across the sphere like that. So if I'm in a thread or a Reddit or a forum on history, that there's some usage of idioms or vernacular that's common across, and this helps this kind of stuff to relate people to certain ideologies, certain positions, and certain, say, mind states, the verve, how we have the same spirit. So if I'm on my miniature wargaming forum, or I'm on my video game forum, or on my whatever and I can kind of recognize in these people the same and intuit the same sort of characteristics, then I know I'm with my tribe, with my people, things like this. And so we try to use this as an identification across life, but in general in socialization situations where we say, can this person relate to me as a friend or an enemy or some such derivation thereof? And I think it's for us super important to not lose touch with normies. Normies are the core to almost every political movement, ideology, theology, but in general, the touchstone for reality. Say, if you go too far into a rabbit warren for certain topics, certain things, into your ideas, you become obsessed, monomaniacal about some certain things. So you say, Silicon Valley are weirdos because they spend so much time around each other talking about the same things in such a idiotic way that it becomes very hard to grasp the mind state, the, call it a hyper reality now, of that person, because they're completely out of touch with the rest of the world. And think, how can someone become like this? Well, it's very easy, because once you surround yourself with like-minded people and you start to build this called echo chamber 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but you understand that the principle here is the same across. So what we want to do here is dispel. We're going to say, look, my channel is going to continue to maintain a certain level of gravity, a certain level of weighted downness to the reality. So we don't go into this hyper reality. We want to escape from the rest of the world. We want to lead the rest of the world. And to lead, you have to understand. And Napoleon was famous for being super ingratiating and cordial with almost every single troop, not just officer in his army, but actual low-level privates and things like this. So it is important for us to maintain that level of relationship, of rapport. And so I think it's best, almost emblematic, or at least obvious to me, that the podcast is the weapon of choice here. It's the mechanism by which year after year we are able to track the normie state, the peon. How does the peon think, and why are they searching, reading, listening to these things, watching these things? Because it may come across as peculiar, bizarre, and most perturbing to those of you who are not maladjusted and who have some sort of grasp on the seriousness, the profundity of the experience that we're going through a decline in the West, and there should be some level of credulity to the wants and wills of the normie. It is worth considering, if not, say, avowing what they have to say or kowtowing to them. It's to say, well, I understand the normie such that I can rule the normie, I can manipulate the normie, whatever it is that your goal or mission is. This is how we go about doing it. If I have to sit down at a dinner table over Thanksgiving with my family, can we discuss things that I know they'll find interesting? Well, here is the cheat card, first of all, but then the say, adjudication, the judgment of these things, because it always comes very easily, to me at least, that there's a judgmental aspect to that, and life is judgmental. People will like to escape this and say, no, I'm not judgmental. I like to be kind and nice to things. But humans understand heuristically and mechanicistically and all of these ways that there's a certain level of judgment ascribed to behaviors, to decisions, to interactions, because that's how we are starting to perceive things like value. Is someone worth spending time with is a judgment, and the judgment is always correspondent to a value system. I'm saying there's an economic value, we're not saying it's materialistic or transactional, but that there is a residual level of value here, which is underlying all of these things. We like to be around pretty people and powerful people and charming people and all of these things, because the value of that is enhancing. Our life gets better being around people who are winners than it does around losers. And this is hopefully very clear and evident to you that you're a winner, and people will gravitate towards you. The magnetization of a winner. You have your own field, of gravity here. You're the sun pulling everybody in. So, in that long-winded adumbrration of this specific topic, we're going to say a Joseph de Maistre quote here, slightly editorialized by yours truly. Every nation gets the entertainment it deserves. And that's true to form, true to life. You'll have the idea that there's a huge degradation and I would say degeneration, retrograde experience with entertainment over the last 100 years. The proliferation of entertainment to the masses, to the peons, in unforeseen ways. So the pictures, for instance, like the cinema, going to the movies was always seen as much more crass or like lower class than something more urbane like the opera, which was already seen as a derivation of something like the orchestra, the symphony. Once again, downstream of being going to church and all these things. So there's certain class aspect to all of these things, because the more proletarization that we have of these things, so the more proletariat basically an activity is, the more base and ignorant and uncouth all of these things start to be, because the person you're attracting doesn't have the pretensions for certain things. They don't have the class and all this level of, well, not supercilious arrogance or anything like that, but just a level of preparation and acclimatization and acumen that is required to understand, required to appreciate these things. So really you're stuck with whatever the masses like. This is why slop from Netflix, slop from the BBC, slop from any number of Disney efforts is the default situation now. Art in general is completely expired, obviously. In the last 100 years there's been next to zero artistic pieces. We get very good entertainment, which I wouldn't knock necessarily, but Panamate circuses is Panamate circuses. If you're being fed bread and you're getting given the gladiatorial games, it's appeasing you, right? You're trying to be supplicated. And so when you have this idea that we are just rabble and they're trying to subdue us rather than rouse us, then you're experiencing what is the default, say, comfort level and or attributed level of artificial happiness. We're saying you need to feel satiated at all times in all possible ways. The government is here to help you. Corporations are here to help you. Everything in life is starting to directionally channel this sort of efforts. It's how do I make these people as docile as possible? Not in a malicious way. This isn't once again, a conspiracy around. There's a cabal of lizard men trying to control. It's more like people flock to things that they like, and the things that they like are the things that reduce cognitive load and efforts and enhance your physical rest and restoration, all these things. So you can see why that we're going to call it the feedback, the positive feedback loop here. So something like the problem-solving aspect to this is first via techniques, because the Western mindset is always around infinite wheels of techniques. How can I make the technology which will bring you these things better, sooner, faster, cheaper, more efficiently, more often, then it is necessarily a case of anything else. It's not malicious in that way. It is malicious as an experience, but we've gone through why consumerism in general is like that. Once you allow for the masses to receive things, they never turn off the want button. They continue to want the things. And it's in your best interests to continue to provide the things. This is how Caesars maintain their rulership and their power base, is because you can sway the masses and the plebs in the way that's very understood. It's not that hard. Give people the things that they want. Ipso facto, you have your leadership right there. It's much more difficult previously if you had to lead a war band, for instance, and you had to be a strong-armed general who takes rough and risk decisions and then goes into war and once again risks your own life. More difficult than Caesar having to just pay for all the adulation he would ever need. Much more simple, and particularly because the plethora of options to earn enough money to maintain these things. You have probably hundreds of men and some women now even in the world who are rich enough to maintain or obtain these things. But most of them choose not to for various reasons. And I think some of them are incapable of being liked. They're just not likable people. Yet, nevertheless, we understand that the normie is not a complex creature and such that you can feed them information, and we call this propaganda. And so we understand that propaganda is fairly easy to come by, and Jeff Bezos buying the Washington Post, for instance, is one just very simple example of that. I want a newspaper to be directly informing people of my own thoughts and wills, and I'm going to lean on its idea in the normie-sphere that publications and journalism is non-biased, objective reporting. Yeah. Seriously, people still believe this. You go into, have a conversation with your friends and family and be like, what's an objective TV channel or radio station or newspaper? And they will like stone cold deadpan tell you that something like CNN or the BBC or the ABC in Australia or something is neutral. It's so good. It's so funny. Anyway, okay. So there's a second derivation. Once again, another tangent oblique to the main point, which is to say, getting to the meat here, rather than rambling, we are going to go through the podcast sphere. And the podcast sphere, the top 10 of 2025. And because I think 2025 is both as significant as a year as you'd want, as insignificant as a year can ever be. Maybe in the history books, we'll just skip right past it. But today we live in it, so we're going to go about discussing it. Number one, maybe to say, US politics by far and away exceeds any other podcast subscription by category. So just for your own edification here, US politics, business, technology, food and drink, finance, sports, news, music, humor, health, politics, health and wellness, education and design. You see of these things on there that there is no art. And don't tell me that music is art, because music has not been art since, I'll say Dvorak. Maybe you could make a case for Tchaikovsky with ballets. But since then, music has just been for the plebs. So it's not artistic. Humor. Sports is very clearly Panamet circumstances. Food and drink is not art. Technology, business, I mean, none of these things are art. So you can see that the cultural aspect of life is deteriorated to such a degree that it's a afterthought. It's not even consideration of people to discuss these things. I sometimes listen to my local classical music channel on the radio in my car, and I guarantee I'm one of maybe 600 listeners across the nation listening to that channel at that point in time. And it is to show you that what was once seen as the highest achievable art with the most merit and the most talented individuals our race might ever produce, in that Bach, Wagner, Mozart, Beethoven, these characters they dedicated their whole lives to this thing, their whole passions, their enormous amount of cognitive processing, brain power and spirit and life force into these things. And now we go, yeah, but I'd rather listen to Taylor Swift sing about her boyfriend's penis. We go, okay. Are these equivalent because we call them music? You know, I don't know. Is it too much to expect things? Yes, of course, it's too much to expect these things. So, nevertheless, Joe Rogan, number one, the classic. I think there's a certain amount of appeal. Now, sorry, just to clarify, I listened to 0 of these top 10, and this is not to be belittling them and condescending or patronizing or anything like that. And it's not to say I'm some supreme tastemaker where I'm so far above beyond anything that's normie-sphere that I could ever imagine. It's just that I find them very interesting. I've collectively probably listened to 2 or 3 of Joe Rogan's podcasts, not in their totality, but in maybe like 1 hour here or there, and then Sean Ryan 1 or 2 on some specific event with the guy who's at the event, telling the story. It's always useful. And then the rest are worthless. But, we'll go into why the normie appreciates them so heavily. And I think there's also one missing here, which would be the There's a sex podcast, obviously dedicated to women, of a blonde girl who talks about being a floozy all the time. I can't remember her name. She was very famous, or she is very famous. Anyway. She's not on here. But I think if you were going to go like on that side of things and say like across the female sphere between say 15 and 45, what do the women listen to? I think it's probably something like that. Relationship versus, I would say, passions, and the passions usually include like makeup or dressmaking. I don't know, what do women listen to? Kardashians, something. Joe Rogan. Now, the descriptions I've taken are just from the actual podcast websites and or the YouTube or whatever they have. So Joe Rogan is calling himself the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. Is a long-form conversation hosted by comedian. Joe Rogan's a comedian. There's no way he's a comedian. He's not even funny. Can I call myself a comedian? I guess I could just call myself a comedian. What's the threshold for that judgment? It's just like, who's going to say not? Is there a comedian union? I don't think there is there? Joe Rogan with friends and guests that have included comedians, actors, musicians, MMA fighters, authors, artists, and beyond. Now, Joe Rogan is super popular, and once again, this is not to gainsay or like try to traduce these guys in that way that look how superior I am in my own ability to read Oswald Spengler versus reading Stephen King or whoever authors he has on. I'm sure it's something like that. It is to say that, Lee Charles, he writes Reacher, that like that boomer call. My like dad loves that one. Jack Reacher goes around punching bad guys. Joe Rogan here having probably the biggest encapsulation, thematic resourcing for the normie-sphere brain is to say, who's interesting? Well, who's currently being talked about to, on what topics? And because he has such grand reach, and this guy seriously podcasts to multiple millions of people every podcast, it's very impressive, his reach and his ability to market himself and sell that podcast, means that he could probably ask anyone he wants on the podcast, and then thus, to that degree, have a podcast for everyone and no one. So to some degree, you'll probably only, if you're an MMA guy, only listen to the MMA ones, and then maybe one or two of like the comedian guests or something like this. So Joe Rogan, I think, perfectly encapsulates. If you wanted to understand what does a normie spend their time doing, thinking about, you probably couldn't go much better in a very subjective sense, topsy-turvy sense, than Joe Rogan, because I think clearly he's attuned himself to the normie sphere in such a way that's almost palpable. You can see it. It's like he is the guy that everyone knows is the podcast guy. Almost popularized the idea of a podcast as a platform, as an instrument. So I think that's probably, you could even say that's the first and best and last place you need to look if you wanted to understand the normies. If you went into every conversation around politics, or you can take the top 10 here: politics, business, technology, food and drink, finance, sports, then you can just have a guest on Joe Rogan probably mention and or discuss these things in that way. Anything from conspiracy theories and aliens all the way through to whether you should have a sauna and a cold bath, probably covered by his show regularly, like is in weekly. And so that's fairly topical, current affairs-y. So that's, and once again, props to Joe for that, because it would be very difficult for me to maintain enthusiasm across year talking to some of these dead shits. I mean, seriously, fucking brain dead idiots. The second one, I literally couldn't find this. I saw the picture, and you can see I've just like copied it. I googled Kit, and I googled K-Knife T and like all of these things. I don't know who this is. Now, I am going to assume it's a true crime podcast, because normies love this. Normies love murder and like horrific crime stories, which would rattle a normal person. Like if you had to be a policeman and go witness the aftermath of like a massacre and like pedos and stuff, and these people are like, no, I love this story. This is so interesting. It's crazy. I guess for me, like the appeal is always like battlefield stories and like warrior stories and guys retelling how they live their lives across adventures and ships and sailing. Maybe it's similar to that in that you like the narrative, the adventure, the story. But it seems very morose and charnel-like. It's to always consider these things in that way. Fairly horrific. I don't know. Anyway, that's number 2 apparently. So if you like, now once again, this could be a kitchen show. This guy could cook, because I don't really understand his expression here. It's a bit of a all-knowing arrogance to it. But assuming either kitchen, so it could be cooking. Cooking is high, food and drink, or it's true crime. Number 3, GMM. So it tells you to tune in every Monday to Friday to watch us eat truly unbelievable things, explore surprising new products and trends, compete in original games with celebrity guests, implement serious experiments in hilarious ways, and more. Now you see, this is pure normie. This is almost admirable in the way that you can traverse every single normie topic that could ever care about. In saying that, they also add on another layer, which is the celebrity. Normdroids love celebrities. I think it's this parasitical relationship with the person you think you know because you've seen them a lot. Like, I assume you viewers know me. But I can actually interact with you. If you ask me questions, I'll answer them. I'm happy to actually have a two-way conversation here. And a pure celebrity is, like Brad Pitt is an actor. Say like, oh yeah, I want to watch him in things. Why would you want to have this actor as a person in something? Who would want this? I've met celebrities in real life and I'm not even close to being starstruck. It's like, okay, so what? Like, and if the women are very attractive, it's like, okay, but if you're attractive women I didn't know before, I'd still be like attracted to you. And it's like a funny guy that's funny. I mean, I think there are some, I want to say awesome. There's some talent that's transcendent. So like if you have a guy who's like, I find Sam Simmons, which is an Australian comedian, hilarious. And I say, I've seen him live and all these things. And so anything Sam Simmons does and says is almost always funny. And so meeting him in real life then is to say like, you have a really funny guy that you're always hanging out with. That would obviously, I see the appeal to a degree. But why would I want to watch a celebrity on YouTube eat something? What possible benefit can that confer to me and my life? And what enlightening way? How is that even a way to spend your time? And I know that there's some bald chap who soys out eating his hot sauces with celebrities. And it's like the most watched, I guess, chicken eating show. But now that I think about it, there's also a lot of those. There's like that really ugly English chick who has chicken dates with random fellaheen trash. So once again, I find it bewildering. You can tell, I guess, that I don't understand the appeal. And so, but if you wanted to know what a normie thinks, and I guess they love this stuff. I used to, when I was younger, trapped into watching one of those gluttonous pigs doing competitive eating. I think that was pretty funny. But I think that's also the Faustian will to dominance. How much can I eat? Just as much as how much can I lift, like the world's strongest man. I think that's more of a humanly fascination. But this just sounds superficial, plain, boring. Anyway, that was GMM, if you're interested. And I think we're covering a lot of important topics here. We're getting to the true core of the normie, which is frightening. It's almost like the abyss, Nietzsche says. You stare into the abyss, it stares back. That's where we're going with this. And you deal with monsters and you don't want to turn into a monster. Rotten Mango. Now this Asian girl is doing a true crime podcast that focuses on storytelling with a purpose. We believe storytelling is one of the few things that brings people together from all walks of life. School does that. Meetings do that. Work, business, games, TV, movies. I think almost everything that's a collective spirit does that. All walks of life. Interesting. I guess other than hyperbole. And I guarantee she has a white boyfriend. I guarantee it. Someone, where's my fact checker? Who's my fact checker? Someone in chat. Find that truth for me. I guarantee it. Yeah. True crime. Once again. Why? Hey, this girl was murdered in cold blood by some deranged brown person. Well, there's a narrative in that, isn't there? It's to probably have safer communities where people aren't randomly murdered. Oh, this guy's best friend killed him over drugs. Wow. What a story. Fascinating. Oh, these really low IQ guys sold drugs and then they did a drive-by. Yeah, okay. crime. We get it. Like, how many? You already have like 50 million crime shows. It's like NCIS, CIS. Is that a different one? You have how many detective shows? Poirot or like Columbo, Sherlock. At least Sherlock did it best and first, maybe. Oh, not first. I know Edgar Allan Poe probably pioneered the storytelling of say detective. I think detective is more interesting. It's like a character exploration of the person who would find solving crimes. Actual crimes and criminals are not that interesting. I think there's nothing else to. Most of them are crimes of a passion or just delusional, brain dead retards being violent and having no impulse control. What's interesting about that? It's crazy. 5. In my very coherent video here on the normie-sphere, the Midas Touch podcast, the fastest growing, according to who? Independent news network in the world. I like the independent here because it's trying to be a quality signifier. It's to say, we're not biased, or you can trust us to not have someone else's interests in mind, or yeah, because I'm sure that's true. We cover breaking news, politics, law, and more. We are unapologetically pro-democracy. So not that independent, huh? Because, man, this is a weird sentence. Did they put a full stop? Okay. Because truth is golden. I would be interested to see the logic. You could say the predicate logic on this. I don't think pro-democracy then follows pro-truth being golden. I think these things are unattached to one another. You can be pro-democracy. I don't know why you would be. But you could be without having truth as your centralizing theme or aspect. I think, once again, it clearly signifies that people like to think of themselves as maybe approaching topics in a way that is unique. It's why you probably watch this channel and other channels, and you're trying to formulate your own brain through different books that you've been reading and anything else you can get your hands on in terms of materials. Particularly when you're younger, I think it's hard to form opinions on things because you have the awareness that you may appear to be wrong or dumb or something, where making your set opinion without all of the approaches or facts leaves you a window of weakness in that, what if I'm wrong? And I express my opinion and then someone's like, haha, you're an idiot, you didn't think about this, and you go, oh, fuck. Whereas in independent news, it's maybe like the appeal is, oh, look how third way I am in terms of I'm not this left-leaning communist drivel, when I'm not this extreme right racist bollocks. I'm actually the objective, fair, I mean, this is just more liberal hogwash. You're basically being a communist without calling yourself one, to be completely frank with you. So I wouldn't be surprised if these communists are just spoon-feeding you propaganda and you're signing up for it, really. Like, you're saying, yes, where's the button for propaganda to beam into my skull? And that's the subscribe button on that podcast. Number 6, 48. Apparently, the true crime, real justice, 48 Hours investigates the most intriguing crime and justice cases that touch on all areas of the human experience, including greed and passion. 48 Hours, which premiered in 1988, has developed a rich history of original reporting and impact journalism. Oh, man. Do journalists think highly of themselves? You know, if you're a journalist watching this, everyone hates you. And I mean that in the way that you should quit your career and do something productive with your life. Seriously. And I genuinely mean this. The world is worse off for every single extra journalist the world is creating. We are worse off by one. We can call them journalist point. Micron. Modicum of journalistic. Because you have to understand that everyone hates the fact that you think your opinion matters, and the way that you report because you're paid to means that you're bought and paid for, which renders everything you say worthless to me. I was like, why would I want to hear what a mouthpiece? I want what the brain thinks. You just spewing whatever you're told to is just pathetic and worthless. Have some backbone and some dignity. You're basically a prostitute for your mouth or your pen finger or whatever it is. Sorry, there's a few rants in here. I'm throwing these out here. Try not to be, I try not to go on tangents a lot and bloviate on all these sort of topics. And I know that it can be alarming if you're the first time viewer and you go, what in actual hell is this guy doing? He's like rambling on these things and throwing inchoate thoughts at me, and then he goes on this Asperger-like tangent. But I'm just saying to you, like, it's very difficult to take reality seriously when this is what you presented is the most popular. And the most popular, obviously, meaning something here. Like, it's to say, okay, yeah, it's popular doesn't mean it's good. But kind of yes, because the quantification of something being good is a lot of people liking it in a way. Now, I'm not saying, like, from a taste perspective, that's true, but it's definitely true from a value perspective, and his post-consumerism. Baudrillard talked about this in his book on consumerism, but you can go in the hyper reality and this consumerist fashion. We go into a materialistic era of post-religiousness and the Caesarism, and then we go to, okay, well, popular actually means powerful, unfortunately. It's what populism is. It's why democracy is tyrannical from the masses. It's horrible. But this is what people like. They like people reporting on other people getting bludgeoned to death. You know, there's always a spectacle to public hangings and beheadings and things like this. And you used to have a whole bunch of Englishmen or Frenchmen or whomever go out to watch a condemned criminal reap his comeuppance and face his doom in that way. And I think there's probably a humanistic fascination with death to say, look it in the face. How does it make you feel? And the spectacle goes into this Colosseum-like behavior. What can we see as the Panama circuses? What is the circus giving us today? Well, it's giving us death. Hooray for that. But I think it's an altogether different thing to find this very gloomy and, once again, morose aspect to this. Say, we have this macabre podcast where every day and every week we go into how someone else was disgustingly defiled and murdered and molested and whatever. Why the And I would really like to have a conversation with anyone who actually finds this stuff good. Honestly, I've never watched a crime show, but like being fascinated to this degree with subscribing to a channel which only produces these things. Oh, man. I don't know if it's boomer brain rot. Like they got all that lead inhalation from petrol and diesel and gas in the 60s and 70s or something. It's crazy. The Sean Ryan show, I'll read his synopsis first. If there is one thing you can come to expect on this channel, it is pure honesty. My main goal here at Vigilance Elite Productions is to give you a little knowledge with a cool twist of entertainment. Here you'll find everything from war stories to self-help videos, funny product reviews, dealing with social anxiety, instructional videos to crowdfunding for those in need. And this is the part on all these podcast videos where I take a 20-second break and I present to you some product I'm selling because I really need the money. And I want to buy another Ferrari. And I want you to buy crap that I don't actually use or want. And some other YouTuber goes, yeah, but it's my job. It's like, well, get a better job. Get a real job. Why is this your job? Hawking just asinine products to people who watch your videos. Really going to take a minute out of... You know how annoying it is to have a whole minute, some video, and like you go through the person's video and there's like a huge gap and there's like, oh, everyone skipped to this point. You're like, are you really just going to make me... Like, what the fuck? Whose production is this? It's like, this has the lowest level of effort to advertising, like, oh, well, there's a product placement in this video, just so you know. Buy my crappy thing that I'm partnered with. What the... People are so desperate for money. It's pathetic. Honestly, I wish we were all poor and I did not have to suffer this shit. Could you imagine 500 years ago, be like, yeah, our most revered entertainer, like Shakespeare, just dropping in an advertisement for like some guy's pub. It's like, make sure halfway through the play, it just like drops down on the front of the panoply and like the curtains, and it's like, hey, just drop down to the Hawk and Pig down the road for your free beer if you mention the name Shakespeare. 10% off. Can you imagine this type of sellout behavior? This is like par for the course for this. This is the status quo of this. Oh man, it's crazy. Truly mental. Sean Ryan interviews, I guess, veterans mostly, which once again, like I said, I've watched a few of the videos. I did find one or two of them fascinating from some aspect of like, what is a modern warrior's mentality? Because going into war is always fascinating to the guy who wishes he was a warrior, or a guy who like has the warrior gene type to him. And so you go, okay, so what is it exactly that these guys have that's different to me? And you can tell almost immediately that most of these guys have the screw loose. And so there's something wrong with them. And in a way that they just don't perceive risk-taking and the ability to sustain their own life is very important. It's not to say they're psycho. They just like, they have cares and whatever. It's more like if you ask them if they cared if they lived or died, they would not respond in the affirmative. They would say like, no, it's fine if I die. And you go, okay, so the self-preservation aspect to being a modern soldier at that level, because most of them are special forces and elite soldiers, is to say, no, I'm happy to die. Or as is, like, I'm also, dying on a battlefield is not something that I would ever shirk or shy away from. But also, I think there has to be a questioning around it. It's like the unquestioning motive of my country that I'm fighting for. It's like, yeah, I signed up for the Navy SEALs. And it's like, yeah, well, we're going to send you to go take over an oil rig in Venezuela. And you go, yep, for sure, let's do it. Rather than, why the fuck am I going to Venezuela to shoot poor saps on an oil rig? Like, what could that possibly have in terms of strategic function? There used to be crusades and there used to be wars of like massive ideological movements and troops all the way through the Holy Roman Empire's history, changing borders and defeating other kingdoms and warring, with your neighbors, internecine wars, things like this. And now it's like, no, we're going to send you to go take on Afghanistan, the world power in poppy growing. Do I really want to die in a cave in Afghanistan? And these guys are, yep, let's do it, let's go. So that sort of mentality, it becomes very garish. I don't know, there's something maybe very pedestrian or proletariat to it. It's like, yeah, I'm happy to die for some strange war in a foreign country I can't pronounce because at least I get to shoot my guns off. I get it. There's excitement to that, but like maybe you could find it other ways. And I think it's always important to say, like, when you look at the guys who has on the show, there's a lot of survivorship bias, obviously. So these guys are the ones that made it out, they made it through, and they're trying to publish their book or whatever stupid thing they're trying to launch. And you go, okay, well, like that's got to be hard to adjust to, right? And like normie life, those kind of guys who are used to basically just training, eat, sleep, train, repeat, and then send out into the combat zone. And it is, and you see like the rate of suicide is super large. But even if they weren't doing that, I guarantee their suicide rate would be high anyway. Because once again, the mentality of most of these guys is like, I'd rather be dead anyway. So what can I get out of it before I do that? It's like, oh, okay. And so I think you go from having maybe respect or like an appreciation of these warrior type guys into being like, this is just an unhinged maniac. And there's also something to that. I mean, I don't know. Would you rather be an unhinged maniac berserker than something else? Probably, actually. But I don't know. I guess the modernization of warfare has also made the mundane the reality. And in doing so has perversely taken a huge toll in the level of respect that we have for veterans and troopers, just because what we're asking them to do is pretty embarrassing shit. And so they have to make it up in their own minds that they have this level of status and prestige. And so once again, it kind of loses its impact in the real life. And you're like, oh, wow, this guy's a psycho killer Delta Force extreme captain colonel. And it just starts to sound a bit like a made up superhero, It's like, this is just a guy who shoots his gun pretty good. He goes around corners and checks what's around first. He knows how to blow things up. Yeah, man, that's cool. We used to have guys wearing armor and knights and they were around swinging swords, and this is probably quite a long step away from that in terms of heroism, unfortunately. And as I say, these guys might have been heroes 500 years ago. It probably sucks for them too, but yeah, that's my evaluation of the Sean Ryan show. Probably the tangent to the normie-sphere, some sort of like offshoot vector that's attributed to normies in a way that, what is war like? Maybe it's a little bit like the male version of what crime is like, so women really love those type of crime ones that we talked about. Maybe it's a male equivalent is what's war like. Probably that's the best analogy for that. Smosh reads Reddit. Probably top 10 of the most cringy, pathetic things to have as your like career would be attaching your namesake to this eponymous, reads Reddit. The Liberator reads Reddit. You guys want to watch me for an hour every Saturday? Read Reddit for an hour. Can you see this made up story about this guy? Come on, brother. Like, you have better things to be doing, and the people watching surely have better things to be doing. This cannot be how people spend it. I truly know that I'm going over probably an hour video here around this, but for pity's sake, Please find something better to do with your life than watching a guy read Reddit. Read the Reddit yourself. Unless you're illiterate, there's no excuse for this. What? Maybe it's one thing to take an excerpt, and I see a tweet on X about some Reddit claim or like Reddit story, and it's like clearly fabricated, preposterous. It's there just to conjure out a laugh or two or bamboozle you or whatever. But there are guys who are like, this is genuinely, ardently, earnestly what is written. What is there to say about that type of credulity? Oh, it's unbelievable, really. Look at this. Whoever made this website did 2 8s. They tied 8th. I don't know how that could be possible. They tied for 8th is this past weekend. I think that's Theo Von, who's a Polish-American, one again, comedian, life survivor, recovering white person, and Muppet. I think he's the first American to try to be a British comedian in a way that's this irreverence and post-cocaine brain idea of funny. I don't watch, obviously, Theo Von. I find most of these things, you could say the novelty wears off fairly quickly. So there's a thin layer of humor around this. Like, he tells a joke and you actually might laugh the first and the second time. And then the third and fourth time it goes, oh, okay. And then like fifth to infinite time, it's the same joke. Same version of the same joke. It's the same theme. There's nothing really original. But once again, people like this. That's why they tune into Big Bang Theory and sitcoms, which have the laugh track. It's like, okay, so this is the laugh track version of a podcast. I guess if you're young, then like a guy talking about drugs is pretty funny. It has other famous people on that you can also relate to, and it's like, this is the classic Rube. Is he as dumb as he seems? I guess so. I feel it would be very difficult to play that part so often and so many times in the way that is not organic. So, could I be a retard for an episode of a podcast? For sure. I could pretend to be a dumb. That's possible. Would I want to be having my whole aspect, my countenance to be an idiot my whole life? It'd be tough. It's like, yeah, but think of all the money he has and all the women he gets and all that. Brother, I couldn't give a shit. I truly, and I don't mean that in a coping, seething way. I don't care. The amount of dignity that you have to not have to think of these things is worth sacrificing. Your dignity should be worth everything to you. Like literally dying over it. That's how much your dignity should be worth. You're gonna sell it out for money? Come on, man. Do you really need that? Like, what are you gonna do with the money? And this goes into almost over these things that the basic normgroid loves. It's like, money, huh? Okay, what are you going to get? Well, I really want to get this mansion. I want to get this sports car. I want to get this watch. I want to get this. So you start to list the material things, right? And then the more advanced version is like, oh, well, it'll allow me to retire and pursue my passions. As if you've got passions worth pursuing, huh? As I say, there are definitely certain things and drives in life where it's worth doing. It should not come at the cost of your dignity. If you're a man, you have to stand there planted 2 feet on the earth and become stalwart in that you're committed to a certain ambit that you're not going to sacrifice it. You can't be a hypocrite about it. And so I'm not saying, maybe, like I say, if Theo Von is this retarded kind of guy who's coked his brain into smithereens, then it's just a podcast of an idiot. And like, is the entertainment value there? Not for me. I guess women watch Kardashians be slags, so why not watch a drug addict be an idiot? I guess that's the value proposition. Once again, can he be funny? I'm sure he's probably funny sometimes. Well, there are a lot of people who can be funny. And in coming and rounding out the top 10 of shit I don't care about is the Diary of a CEO with some half-caste, African-looking Chinese maybe. Stephen Bartlett. The Diary of a CEO, an unfiltered journey into the remarkable stories and untold dimensions of the world's most influential people, experts, and thinkers. Maybe this is where the normie-sphere starts to take its course directly into the pseudo-intellectual sphere. That could be right. Once again, to me, I guess the idea that an influential speaker or thinker would go on a normie tier podcast, like if you're in the top 10, you're not probably saying anything that's that outrageous or interesting. Experts we all know are just credentialists and have almost no bearing or weight. there have been a slew of impressive and super knowledgeable men, women throughout the last century that you'll only read in some obscure pamphlet or internet blog or something, because they can't get platformed, because it's like, why would I want to platform a guy who's not charismatic, or just, all these things? Whereas you say like, oh no, this guy's the professor of theology at Oxford, or the professor of women's studies at Cambridge. It's like, that's an expert in women. I'm the expert in women and men. I'm an expert in all things. I don't. It's really, I struggle to see the appeal of some. Once again, I assume he plays the straight man in this. Well, maybe he's gay. He looks a bit homo, but the straight man in the theatrical sense of like, I'm going to ask the questions as an unknowing listener, as a third person, kind of like the literary device here, and say, if I ask the questions like a normie, then you can give me answers that will slightly point me in the direction. But like, why? What benefit could I do? Like, why wouldn't I just want to, I don't know. Even at this point, I think you could just ask an AI, give the AI explanation, because then you don't have to suffer through obnoxious twats giving you explanations on these things. Who calls himself a thinker? Aren't we all thinkers? I guess to some level of degree, you're thinking about something sometimes. I know there are people with no inner monologue. I guess that would be the only exception. The thinkers and unthinkers. Yeah, the most influential people are. So he's got the lizard man on his podcast and goes in and says, they're controlling the world's supply of uranium. Why are you doing that? It's like, it's for the power, Stephen Bartlett. Do it because I want more power. It's like, okay, well, there has to be more to it than that. There's not, man. Unless you want more treasure, like a dragon, then you want more power, like Beowulf. That was the same. So anyway, I think that's the fairly long-winded synopsis. Not too many diatribes. I try to trim these down, Sometimes I think you just have to meander through a video. And whether you've made it this far or not, it's probably besides the point. You've got to the end. That's the important part. You can say you finished it. And if you're a completionist for the Liberator's videos, then this is just another one of those videos you have to suffer through. Maybe this is the worst podcast. I could call this one a podcast. Maybe you know what, I'll put it in my podcast playlist and then I can call it a podcast. And then when eventually I'm popular enough in 100 years, when I have my 10,000 subscriber in 100 years, I'll try and invite, I'll send out some shotgun invites to all of these people and say, hey, do you want to come on my podcast? And I can go on the podcast tour. Finally, get the recognition I deserve as the world's most interesting man. No. I guess the final ploy here, the final gambit to bring you up to speed on my disaffected notions, my pompous and arrogant means of demonstrating my superiority to the normgroid. So you can't say you're not a normie because then you're a normie. And you say, no, look, I have a multi-dimensional graph. I have a 2D matrix where we go on two planes here. We go soul and soulless, and boomer and sim. If you know what a sim is, it's a sensitive young man. And you see here, the soulful, sensitive young man is yours truly. I'll always be 21 in life and in spirit. No, it is to say that the way that you can start to appreciate things, hopefully to you, is that there's some boomers that are cool. We all hate boomers. That's fine. There are exceptions to rules. And the boomer who's still got it going, still understands the life focus and appreciation of these things. You're going to we all love Trump because he's funny sometimes. Something like that. Let's go the soulful boomer. The soulful boomer is one archetype or the mainstay of, and you'll age into one. I tell you, if you continue to maintain your soul, if you never sell out, never compromise on your ideals, then I can guarantee you'll age into the cool boomer, and nothing can affect you. Already I've been to spookified. Even as a sensitive young man, I try to blast through all those geists. And in otherwise, I think that's the continuation of your life force into greater and deeper meaning, is to try to channel what would be the aged, wise wisdom of, imagine if Gandalf was still heroic and beastly, wasn't so Catholic and I'm an angel, but like more Aragorn style, like old king doing badass stuff, going on adventures, plundering, that sort of stuff. That's the soulful boomer in roundabout way, the aspect. Now, sensitive young man. So, Destiny here, friend of the channel. Sorry, this is such a stupid video. Destiny, the friend of the channel, who's a sensitive young man, is completely soulless. And he was born soulless. I think there's something definitively wrong with this guy in his inner ego. He has no appreciation for what it means to live life affirmingly, overcoming these things. I think he's probably given into every single vice that he has in a consumerist and very clearly surrendering function. How can I capitulate to my wants and whims? And he does this out of, I guess, a perverse sense of accomplishment. It's like, I can achieve my wants and desires, thus I'm doing a good job at living and life affirmation. It's almost that modern day hippie, is to say life is an appearance. It's performative. It's how do I maintain my level of sanity when my brain is telling me to satiate itself? How do I hit the dopamine button continuously? And this is what it means to be a sensitive young man, but soulless. You lose your way. It's like, he in general is probably always going to be puerile. He's going to have this inability to mature because of who he is and the way that he thinks and the way that life appears to him in his prism. And I think he's inescapable in that he's despoiled in his soul. He's a rotten apple core of a man. Sensitive young man, but a soulless, rotten one. And it's, once again, he's obnoxious and odious for almost every single reason. It's like a Stygian version of a human man, or like a Gothic Faustian man. Like, how do we pervert the Gothic? What does a perversion of this look like? It's like a Mel Gibson movie. So like, there's an apotheosis to this, is when remove him from society. The boomer, soulless boomer, going on cruises. Sold out 30 years ago. Sold their kids and their grandkids' futures for a nice life of, satiation, wants and whims. The Panama Circus basically is the boomer, and as I say, struggling is something that is alien to them, and suffering is not something that they would condone and approbate, and such that they would continue to live the good life. And the good life here, I think, is sold to them as the American dream. It's sold to them as some sort of ephemeral, ungraspable notion. It's like, you can be happy forever. And the American is actually probably the epitome of this. I think most nations are slightly more cynical when it comes to this sort of stuff, but Americans in general like to have this idea of optimism as a goal, or like a state of being optimistic. And I think the Russian is the pessimist, the eternal pessimist on the other hand, which is also unhealthy and also attributes a certain dourness to the Russian in general. And then you have the other tribes and nations who are just soulless or fellahin. But the idea here is that Americans have been sold optimism as something graspable, something not nebulous, but real, palpable. It's just not true, So the boomer, guess, sold their soul, the Faustian pact, but in all, for something that didn't really exist, for nonsense. It's like if Faust's encounter with Mephistopheles, but except Mephistopheles is Bozo the clown. And Bozo the clown came up to him and was like, "You want to sell your soul, buddy?" And they said yes, because it was like, why not? What else are they going to use it for? Whatever. Okay. Thanks for tuning in. Podcast over.